Hi, very good morning. I'm Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. All my video lectures are mainly for educative purpose. This lecture will be very useful to fourth year students. Also, it will be useful to first year, second year, third year student also. In continuity with abdominal examination, this is abdominal palpation, very frequently asked in your theory as well as in oral. Some of the parts of this particular chapter may be asked to you in your oral, most common. So you should be aware of it and in your internship as well as during your private practice. How you examine, what you look for, what you identify will be very, very helpful. So we'll be dealing with abdominal examination. In general, these are the common principles which will be there for palpation, also in case of respiratory system, cardiovascular system, but today we'll be dealing with abdominal examination. So palpation can be done in multiple different positions. Here you can see this is in supine position with leg flexed. This is with extension. This is for fluid thrill. This is with leg flexion, and this is abdominal examination done in a person who has got tenderness in abdomen in a sitting posture. So you can examine also in a sitting posture, but this is not commonly routinely being done. Now, what are the general rules for palpation? What examiner is supposed to do? Examiner should do an examination in a room which is having a very good light and atmosphere is comfortable. Means usually we say warm room. Examiner must warm his hand and nails should be short. First, he should introduce himself to a patient and explain him what you are going to do. While you are doing an auscultation, you should warm your stethoscope also. When you are doing a palpation, always divert the mind of the patient, or we call distract the patient by asking few questions so that you can exactly identify whether there is rigidity, whether there is guarding, whether there is any tenderness, superficial or deep tenderness, etc. You can identify. As far as patient is concerned, patient should have an empty bladder. He should be examined in a supine posture with arm by the side or arm over the chest. As far as possible, avoid the arm below the head, because when you put the arm below the head, usually abdominal wall will be little tightened. So that should be avoided because that can be misdiagnosed as guarding or rigidity. Abdomen should be completely exposed right from xiphisternum up to pubic symphysis. Ask the patient to point the area where he is having a pain, and that particular portion of abdomen should be examined last in palpation. As such, we do palpation after auscultation. So by the time you already know where is the tenderness, and when you are palpating, do look at the face to find out tenderness and how severe it is by facial expression. During tender area palpation, you might require to flex at knee so that your abdominal wall is little bit relaxed. Support the head and neck by adequate quantity of pillow. So when you start palpating, always stand on the right side. Explain the person and ask him to relax. Best examination is done in a supine posture. as far as possible, always examine in a supine posture with leg extended. In case of a person, if he is not able to extend because of tenderness, you can examine in a flex position, flexion at hip, flexion at knee. Best is extension at both, that is hip as well as knee. There are different type of palpation. We'll be mentioning some of those. First palpation what we do is always superficial palpation. Never palpate the tender area first. So tender area should be palpated the last. Reassure the patient that you will not give pain or you will not induce pain while palpating the tender area. Talk with the person, or we call divert the person by asking few questions, and look at the facial expression. And we have already mentioned before, stand on the right side and examine. This is inflection, this is also inflection. Here you can see this is completely exposed, there is no exposure of abdomen. This is a wrong method, this is the perfect method. So stand on the right side. Sitting down is not commonly being required. Hand and forearms should be at the level of the patient's abdomen. Constantly look at the patient face to find out the tenderness. First, always do the superficial palpation followed by a deep palpation. Either you can go clockwise or anti-clockwise. The tender area should be always examined last. So follow that particular pattern. Now I'm mentioning what are the different types of palpation. By and large, we require superficial and deep palpation. Those are more than enough. But in some condition, we might require some other characteristic of palpation. There is always a word that palpation is the most difficult part of examination because it is what you feel. If you don't do palpation properly, you can misinterpret. You can miss something. So always take an adequate time to do palpation. Light palpation is usually we call gentle palpation. So you have to just touch the superficial surface of an abdominal wall. You don't have to press your hand much. By this you try to find out whether the abdominal muscle are in spasm or not. If entire abdominal wall is in spasm, we call that as rigidity. Rigidity is very characteristic of any inflamed structure below the palpating area. If there is a generalized rigidity, means all over the abdomen, it is very characteristic of peritonitis, which can be because of multiple different conditions. It can be spontaneous bacterial peritonitis, it can be secondary due to perforation. So rigidity will be one of the most common finding in that. Second common condition where you can come across a generalized rigidity is tetanus, in which along with the abdominal wall rigidity you will get spasm of the neck. Person might have opisthotonous position and person might have trismus with spasm of the facial muscle we call rhizus sardonicus. So always try to look for those, and if those are present, it is more in favor of tetanus. Now in superficial palpation, if you don't come across any spasm of abdominal wall, and when you come to palpate the tender area, there is no spasm of muscle. But when you do a deep palpation in a tender area, you look at the patient face. Patient will have a little change in the facial expression and he will complain of pain while you are doing a deep palpation. At the same time, the abdominal muscle in that area undergoes spasm. We call guarding. Guarding is usually because of localized area where there is an inflammation. Say example, appendicitis. cholecystitis, etc. In those areas, when you try to palpate, the muscle will go into spasm, and that we call as a guarding. Now, this two other methods, that is deep slipping palpation and deep press palpation, these are usually to palpate the deeper organs or a solid structure which you are not able to identify by superficial palpation. So while palpating the deeper structure, we call mass or a lump or a deeper organ, we usually go for deep press palpation or deep slipping palpation. This is nothing else. It is a little altered method of deep palpation. The name is just changed, but by and large, you will be able to do the deep palpation properly. And if you do the deep palpation properly, you will be able to identify whether the specific organ is enlarged or there is a deep mass. Now, in a early enlargement of the spleen or early enlargement of the liver, which you cannot identify by the deep palpation, you will go for the hooking method. So hooking method is done only in case of a just enlargement of the spleen or just enlargement of the liver. We call just palpable liver or just palpable spleen, which you are not able to identify by deep palpation. And asking a person to take a deep inspiration and still you are not able to palpate, then you can go for a hooking method. In case of a kidney, kidney is a posterior structure. So to identify an enlargement of the kidney in palpation, you usually go for bimanual palpation, that is by using two hands. So that is called bimanual palpation, and this is done mainly for palpation of kidney only. If there is a good quantity of a free fluid in the abdomen, while palpating for liver and spleen, the fluid will interfere for palpation of spleen and liver. In that particular condition, you first sift the fluid and then try to palpate. This is called ballotment method. We'll be explaining you further. If you are suspecting aortic abdominal aneurysm or a mass sitting on the aorta or mass in front of abdominal aortic aneurysm, you can go for what is called as a niches position. Person has to acquire a niches position, and in that you try to put your hand over the abdominal wall and palpate for the pulsation. We'll be explaining you what is the importance and how you differentiate abdominal aortic aneurysm and mass sitting on the aorta. While doing a palpation, there are two things together in palpation. While looking for shifting dullness and looking for fluid thrill, you will require, while doing a fluid thrill, one additional person helps. By and large, in an exam, you take the help of the patient himself. We'll be showing you the technique how you do for the fluid thrill. And some of the things which you can palpate, if they are loud enough, like rub, we call palpable rub, mainly hepatic rub and splenic rub. If bruit is very loud enough over the artery, you can have palpable bruit, and over the portion where you got fluid plus air, you can get even a splash. Classical example is in case of a pyloric stenosis. So all this should be looked in palpation. Now we'll be going through one by one. By and large, it is a single-handed method. So you use mainly the right hand, and while doing a palpation, you have to move the hand at the wrist and fingertips at metacarpophalangeal joints. In superficial palpation, we don't move at all at metacarpophalangeal joints. But while doing a deep palpation, you move your fingertips by moving your fingers in extension at metacarpophalangeal joints. So technology will change in superficial palpation and deep palpation. Usually it is a single-handed method. If in a deep palpation with movement at the metacarpophalangeal joints and all finger in extension, still you are not able to palpate the deep structures like deep organs, a deep mass, etc. Then you can take the help of the other hand, which will help in pushing the palpating hand. We call two-hand method. We'll be showing you photographs, etc. And I already mentioned that in a case of a kidney palpation, what is the posterior structure? You use what we call as a bimanual palpation. I've already told you hooking method is mainly for just palpable liver or spleen, which you are not able to identify by even by two-hand method or deep palpation. Ballotment is mainly done in case of ascites, and in case of a doubt, you are not able to identify by two-hand method or by deep palpation or also by hooking method. You can utilize scratch test, which will be mainly on auscultation. And I've already discussed on auscultation that scratching on the abdominal wall, you auscultate. Suddenly, as soon as you come close to the lower border of liver or close to the spleen border, the sound will become louder, and that will be the technology by which you can identify the lower border of liver or lower border of spleen. Single hand palpation is usually very good in case of a lean thin build individual. Bimanual palpation is usually done for kidney, but two hand methods will be good in case of obese or muscular individual, or we call deep palpation with single hand or with two hands. That will be very useful. And whenever you palpate for the liver, while palpating for the liver, always palpate the lower border of liver on deep inspiration and confirm that liver moves with respiration, because diaphragm moves and liver is below the diaphragm. Superficial method is mainly to look for the rigidity, and I already mentioned tetanus and peritonitis is the most common conditions. Yes, once in a while you will come across a person with psychological disorders, we call as a hysterical individual, who will keep the abdomen tight, and when you divert the mind, you will be able to pick up whether it is true rigidity or a pseudo rigidity. And in a case of a non-cooperative person also, person will suddenly contract the muscle, abdominal wall muscle, and you will get a false finding of rigidity. During a deep palpation, look for guarding and rigidity, which you will be able to identify while doing a deep palpation. But during deep palpation, guarding will be better identified, while in superficial palpation, rigidity will be better identified. Guarding is a localized over the tender organs. While doing a deep palpation, along with identification of guarding and rigidity, you can identify swelling or what we call as a lump. And in that lump, you will look for size, shape, surface, tenderness, consistency, movement with respiration, pulsation, peristalsis. All those things, what you look in a swelling in a surgical site, you will have to mention all those findings. In all person, you will be examining for enlargement of liver, enlargement of spleen, and as far as kidney is concerned, it is best identified by bimanual palpation. If bladder is full and distended, in case of retention of urine, particularly chronic retention of urine or acute retention of urine, it may be palpable suprapubic, above the pubic symphysis. Gallbladder, if it is distended, inflamed or non-inflamed, will be palpable at what we call as a junction of right midclavicular and right costal margin. And in case of cholecystitis, Murphy's sign will be positive. Uterus, if it is enlarged because of uterine pathophysiology like pregnancy, fibroid, hydatiform mole, choriocarcinoma, uterine carcinoma, hematocolpus. In all these conditions, uterus is quite big enough and it becomes suprapubic, it will be easily palpable. Pancreas being a retroperitoneal structure, posterior structure, difficult to palpate. So kidney and pancreas, when they become markedly enlarged, very commonly in case of malignancy, and in case of a kidney, like polycystic kidney, Wilms tumor or renal cell carcinoma, kidney when it becomes 2 times or 3 times the original size, then it will be palpable per abdomen. Otherwise, it is very, very difficult to palpate. But in case of pancreas, particularly pancreatic carcinoma, when it is big tumor, it may be palpable per abdomen. But in case of an acute pancreatitis, particularly we call pseudocyst of pancreas, which is collection of a fluid in a lesser sac or a greater sac, it will be a cystic swelling which will be palpable not because of pancreas but because of a pseudopancreatic cyst. Ovarian tumors, particularly teratomas, they may be big enough to become suprapubic, or even ovarian carcinoma may be palpable per abdomen. In case of appendicular pathophysiology, particularly rupture of appendicular mass, appendix, inflamed appendix, you will have a mass formation which may be palpable per abdomen in a right iliac fossa. Only in case of a situs inversus, it will be in a left iliac fossa. I have already mentioned that kidney will be palpable only by bimanual palpation, and in case of ascites, it will be by ballotment method. We always palpate for splash, pulsation, fetal movement, rub may be palpable, fluid thrill may be palpable if there is an adequate quantity of a free fluid in abdomen, and if a bruit is loud enough, bruit may be also palpable on palpation. And we already mentioned to differentiate between abdominal aortic aneurysm, abdominal aorta pulsation, and a mass sitting on abdominal aorta. You will have to differentiate by a knee chest position, and in that you will have to examine. As far as the superficial palpation is concerned, we have already mentioned that when you are palpating, it is a gentle movement over the abdominal wall, and you are looking for a continuous contraction of abdominal wall, we call as a rigidity, and that will be very common in classical 2 condition we call as a peritonitis and in case of a tetanus. Yes, in non-pathological condition like hysterical individual and non-cooperative person. During this superficial palpation, it is always a single hand palpation, and it is without moving at metacarpophalangeal joint. So you don't dip your finger into abdomen. While in a deep palpation, you have to push your finger in over the abdominal wall so that you can identify liver, spleen, palpable mass, you can identify tenderness, and you can look for even guarding. And basic principle we have already mentioned before, that you always go from a non-tender area, and last area to be palpable is a tender area. Either you go in a clockwise direction or an anti-clockwise direction, whichever you prefer, but the last area to be palpable is a tender area, and you always palpate. At least liver and spleen should be palpable, so you spleen should be palpated. So look for liver enlargement and spleen enlargement. Also, in case of a mass, deep palpation will be able to pick up. You should look for tenderness and guarding. In a case of just palpable liver, you can go for a dipping method. or a hooking method. And during hooking method, left costal margin is utilized for spleen and right costal margin is utilized for liver palpation. We'll be showing you those photographs. And in suspected bladder enlargement, because of retention, either acute or chronic retention, it will be a suprapubic mass. You will be palpating in a hypogastrium just above the pubic symphysis. And in a female, enlarged uterus, you should be able to differentiate from bladder. These are all the things you will be looking for. So superficial palpation, you are looking for sensitive area, any mass, any dullness, and you try to localize. So pain, tenderness, rigidity, and superficial swelling. In a deep palpation, you are looking for guarding, rebound tenderness, and sometimes if you are not able to pick up on superficial palpation, you can pick up on deep palpation. Usually superficial palpation is enough to identify the rigidity, but in case of a deep palpation, this is two hand method, this is single hand method. So in a single hand method, you will have to flex your finger and dip your finger over the abdominal wall. If you are not able to identify by that, you can go for a two hand method, which is mainly for deeper structure and deeper mass. This is single hand method, most commonly being utilized. You can go in a clockwise method or anti-clockwise. Always go from a non-tender area to the tender area. So these are some of the principles you will have to follow. And always initially, first gentle palpation we call superficial, followed by a deep palpation. So this is single hand method. These are all the different conditions which can give rise to palpable organ or palpable mass. At your leisure time, you can go through. You should be aware of a normal anatomical structure in those quadrants. Normally we divide into 4 quadrants, that is right hypochondrium, left hypochondrium, right lumbar, left lumbar, and we usually mention umbilical region, right iliac fossa, left iliac fossa, and hypogastrium. So 9 quadrant method is always little better to give you a proper description of which organ is being enlarged. So try to look for all those findings. You can see here, this is the enlargement of the gallbladder, because gallbladder is free to move. So you can have sometime a weak dilated gallbladder palpable even in a right iliac fossa. Otherwise, usually you get gallbladder palpable at the junction of mid-clavicular line and right costal margin. So at that spot, it will be palpable. And tenderness in that area, you give a name, Murphy's sign. Spleen, for palpation of spleen, you will be going from right iliac fossa towards the left hypochondrium. So we'll be mentioning all those things. So normally palpable structure, what are normally palpable structure? You can palpate the abdominal muscle which are contracted, particularly because of rigidity. Cecum and sigmoid is felt when it is spastic, full of gas or fluid, or may be palpable if there is a fecal impaction. 4th and 5th lumbar vertebra may be palpable only in a thin-built individual. Abdominal aortic pulsation may be palpable in a normal person if he is a thin-built individual, and it will be felt just below the umbilicus. Lower pole of right kidney may be palpable only in case of a thin-built individual. Liver usually does not descend much below the right costal margin on a deep inspiration, but in a thin-built individual and also in a person with emphysema or right side pathophysiology like right side pneumothorax or push of diaphragm down In a case of a unilateral emphysema on the right side, very rare, you can have a push of a diaphragm down, but right side pneumothorax and emphysema bilateral will push the diaphragm down. So liver will be pushed down and liver lower border may be palpable. If the Riddle's lobe is little enlarged, that may be palpable per abdomen. So these are some of the structure which may be palpable. But by and large, per abdomen, liver, spleen, bladder, uterus, gallbladder are not palpable unless they are enlarged. Kidney, pancreas being a retroperitoneal structure, even in a enlargement, mild enlargement to moderate enlargement, they are not palpable. Lymph nodes which are small enlarged lymph nodes may not be palpable. But a huge enlargement of a lymph nodes, malignant lymph nodes, may be so much enlarged so they may become palpable as a mass. So if you can't identify by a superficial palpation, usually you go for a deep palpation. And in a deep palpation, we always look for liver and spleen, whether they are enlarged or not. And if they are enlarged, then you have to give a description: size, shape, surface, consistency, movement with respiration, tender, non-tender, all those things you have to mention in detail. We already mentioned gallbladder, kidney, colon, and urinary bladder. Normal person, it is not palpable. In a pathological condition, only they will be palpable. The structure which you cannot identify, we mention that as a mass, or sometimes you use the word lump. Most common method which is utilized in a deep palpation is a single hand method, two hand method. This is single hand method, this is two hand method. You can go for bimanual palpation, you can go for hooking method. I have already mentioned that hooking method is most commonly utilized in a just palpable liver or just palpable spleen by using a hooking at right costal margin or left costal margin. Right costal margin for liver, left costal margin for spleen. And while doing a hooking method, you are asking a person to take a very deep inspiration. And that is a technology. Now we have already mentioned, I have explained that entire palm is being utilized. In superficial palpation, we don't move the fingers, which are extended fingers at metacarpophalangeal joints. But in a deep palpation, we move the finger so that we dip our finger into abdomen so that we can palpate the deeper structures. In a two hand method, with the second hand you are pushing the palpating hand deeper down so that you can palpate the deeper structure and you can identify the deep tenderness. So usually that is the two things which are being utilized. And in deep palpation, you push your hand almost, it is said that up to 4 centimeter. But if a person is getting a pain, don't try to push the hand more. Person will not allow you to palpate further. So deep palpation is mainly utilized for deep mass or deeper structures. Bimanual palpation you can utilize in mainly in case of a kidney. You can utilize that technique by using the two hand for liver and spleen. We'll be showing you some of the photographs. Again, we have told you that deep pressure, that is deep palpation, is for tenderness, deep structure tenderness. Ballotment is mainly only in case of ascites. Fluid thrill is only in case of ascites. And I already mentioned that hooking method is for just enlarged spleen or just enlarged liver. Left costal margin for spleen, right costal margin for liver. This is two hand method. You can see that the person is using his second hand. This is a pushing hand, this is palpating hand. This is a pushing hand, this is a pushing hand, this is a palpating hand. This is single hand method. Same hand pushes and palpates. So that is single hand method. This is the movement at metacarpophalangeal joint during deep palpation. And whenever you are doing that, you are looking at the facial expression. Superficial palpation will identify rigidity, while deep palpation will help you to identify guarding and deep tenderness. Also, that is technology which is being utilized for rebound tenderness. What is being done in a rebound tenderness? You apply a deep pressure and suddenly leave it, and that will give rise to what is called as a rebound tenderness. And by doing a deep palpation, you are going to identify whether the organ is enlarged or not. And in an enlarged organ, the size, shape, surface, border, consistency, tender, non-tender, soft or hard, whether it moves with respiration or not, and whether there is impulse on cuffing, whether there is any pulsation, etc. So all those you try to identify. This already we have given a explanation on inspection, that whenever you flex at neck, abdominal wall will contract. If it is an abdominal wall mass, it will become more prominent, or what we call as an extra abdominal mass will become more prominent. Also, sometimes they utilize the word intramural mass. But if it is inside the abdomen, below the anterior abdominal wall, the mass will become less prominent when the patient raises the head. This is a very, very important thing. It's very easy to differentiate between abdominal wall mass and intra-abdominal mass. Also, to identify the intramural pain, there will be less tenderness, which indicates intra-abdominal pain. Some tenderness indicates same tenderness, same amount of tenderness. If it is there, that means it is an intramural pain. And that will happen very frequently if there is something which is happening in a abdominal wall, like recti muscle, hematoma, etc. So while doing a superficial palpation, you will be able to identify rigidity, but in a deep palpation, tenderness, guarding, rebound tenderness, which is given a name Rawsing sign, that is while you are pressing in a left iliac fossa over the sigmoid colon and you suddenly release it, you get a pain in a right iliac fossa in an inflamed appendix. This is called rebound tenderness. If there is a tenderness plus rigidity, it is very frequently in a perforated viscous, say like perforated DU, perforated GU, or perforated typhoid ulcer. Palpable mass may be because of enlarged organ. If we are able to identify, we mention hepatomegaly or splenomegaly. If we are not able to identify, we usually use the word mass. And then you have to give a description: site, size, shape, surface, consistency, color of the skin, movement, etc. All those things you will have to mention. And in case of an pulsation, mainly it will be because of an aortic pulsation, which may be sometime very easily palpable in a very thin built individual in the center midline up to umbilicus. If there is an abdominal aortic aneurysm, you will get a swelling and there will be pulsatile swelling, and this pulsation will be not transmitted pulsation, which will be expansile pulsation. If it is a transmitted pulsation, it will be because of a mass like lymph nodes sitting over the abdominal aorta, and when it becomes difficult, you can do examination in a knee chest position. So if you get a board like rigidity, it is classical of a peritonitis. It is very characteristic of peritonitis, and also in case of tetanus. And I have already mentioned, in case of tetanus, do look for trismus and rhizus sardonicus, and good number of time person may get tetanic spasm and even opisthotonus, which is not a characteristic in a case of peritonitis. While doing a palpation, sometimes you get a typical feel, that is dough feel, dough kneading sensation. It is very common in, particularly in India, because tuberculosis is very common, and that is secondary due to tubercular peritonitis. Once in a while, you can get similar type of feeling in a carcinomatous peritonitis. Usually, abdominal wall is very much laxed, particularly in a multipara, old age person, severe dehydration, a severely emaciated person, and also in a person with obesity. In that, abdominal wall is markedly relaxed. So, the word utilized is decreased density. All finding of inspection can be confirmed by palpation, like shape of abdomen. By doing a measurements, you can identify the shape of abdomen also. Look for respiratory movement, position of umbilicus, that is distance from the xiphisternum to the umbilicus and from umbilicus to the pubic symphysis, whether it is pushed down or pushed up. Entire detail of swelling can be described, which you have mentioned in case of inspection, and now you can mention size, exact size you can mention, because now in palpation you can do the measurements. You can palpate for tenderness, pulsation, movement with respiration, etc. Visible peristalsis, now you can clearly make out. Pulsation, now you can confirm it by palpation, whether it is transmitted or expansile pulsation, and you can confirm it also by Nietzsche's position. In a dilated veins, now you can identify the blood flow, whether it is below upward, classical in case of inferior vena cava obstruction, and above downwards in case of a superior vena cava obstruction, and away from the umbilicus in case of caput medusa. Scar, you can identify tenderness, size, any discharge, any gap, or also you can identify the scar hernia, etc. Divarication of recti can be also confirmed by palpation. When you ask the person to elevate the head, you can see that the two recti are separated, and between the two recti there is a gap and there is a bulging of abdominal wall. That can be confirmed by palpation, which you have seen on inspection. Hernial orifices you can examine in detail on palpation regarding the site, size, impulse on cuffing, whether it is reducible, non-reducible, whether there is obstruction or not, what structure is present in a hernia, etc. And complete examination of external genital can be done, because now you are allowed to do palpation. Examination of anal region and perianal region by palpation you can find out by doing a PR proctoscopy, and in female per speculum examination and PV examination, and you can look for tenderness, any discharge, etc. And back of the abdomen, particularly at renal angle, you can look for costovertebral tenderness, renal angle tenderness you can examine, or even swelling, redness, tenderness, signs of inflammation at renal angle in case of perinephric abscess and pyelonephritis, acute pyelonephritis. You can examine the groin and inguinal region again for undescended testis, any swelling, inguinal hernia, femoral hernia, etc. So all this, whatever you have done on inspection, you can confirm by palpation. So abdominal palpation will include looking for rigidity, guarding mass and organs. In scar, you can do measurements. In dilated veins, you can look for the blood flow, whether it is below upward or above downwards, or away from umbilicus in case of caput medusa. You can identify the position of umbilicus, that is the distance from xiphisternum to umbilicus and from umbilicus to pubic symphysis. We know very well, we have mentioned in on inspection, that is umbilicus will be pushed down in case of obesity and ascites. It will be pushed up in case of a pelvic mass. Examination of external genital, hernia, PR proctoscopy, PV per speculum gives you a lot of idea. But in oral exam, you should mention that I would like to examine external genitals, hernial orifices, etc. You should mention that because that is a part of abdominal examination and particularly in case of palpation. And we have mentioned that at the renal angle and over the spine, we'll be looking for any swelling, tenderness, and signs of inflammations. And also, you will examine palpation. You will be utilizing for fluid thrill, palpable rub, palpable bruit, splash, etc. All those can be examined during palpation. These are all the different area where you can look for tenderness. At your leisure time, you can go through. Say this is 1 is for gastric ulcer, 2 is for duodenal ulcer, 3 is for pancreatic tumor, 4 is cholecystitis or gallbladder, we call Murphy's sign. 5, this 5 is for appendicitis, that is in a right iliac fossa. 7 is for urinary bladder. 8 is for ileocecal junction. 9 is sigmoid colon. 10 is spleen. 11 is for liver. And 12 is for pancreatitis. These are all the area which you can go through. Now I am mentioning some of the findings. This is two-hand method, but by and large we don't require for this. This is for only deep tenderness and deeper masses. I'll be mentioning little bit regarding Murphy's sign, McBurney's point tenderness, Rousing sign, psoas, obturator, rebound tenderness, and costovertebral tenderness. So we are mentioning this because this can be asked to you in your oral and sometime can be asked in your theory also as a short notes. Rousing sign is for acute appendicitis. Obturator sign is again for appendicitis but specifically pelvic appendicitis. Psoas sign is for retrocecal appendicitis. This is very commonly asked in your oral. So do remember this. Again I am repeating. Rousing sign or we call rebound tenderness is for acute appendicitis. Obturator sign is for pelvic appendicitis. Because while eliciting this, you are moving the portion which will stimulate the pelvic appendix, and in a psoas sign, you are going to detect retrocecal because that will stimulate retrocecal appendix. Also, in Crohn's disease and perinephric abscess, you will get that psoas sign may be positive in those conditions. There is one more sign called Dunfield's sign in acute appendicitis. Murphy's sign is a characteristic of an acute cholecystitis, which is a tenderness, and person will stop the respiratory movement when you are palpating at the junction of right costal margin and mid-clavicular line, right mid-clavicular line, and you are asking a person to take a deep inspiration. Boas sign is when the pain is radiating to the tip of right scapula, that is the lower border of a right scapula, and at that area you get a hyperesthesia in case of an acute cholecystitis. There will be a lower rib tenderness, that is called thumping tenderness in case of a diaphragm or in case of an inflamed liver or inflamed spleen. So these are some of the signs which can be asked to you in your oral. So do remember some of these signs which are very frequently asked in your oral. On examination, Gray Turner's sign is the bluish discoloration in a right iliac fossa or a left iliac fossa, or we call lower flanks, which is a characteristic of a retroperitoneal bleeding, which is very common in acute hemorrhagic pancreatitis, rupture of kidney, or maybe even in a case of an ectopic pregnancy rupture, etc., or we call hemoperitoneum. Cullen sign is also same, but it is a bluish discoloration around the umbilicus. Again, it is in a peritoneal bleeding very frequently because of hemorrhagic pancreatitis. There is one sign called as a Kehr's sign, where the person complains of the pain in a left shoulder region, which is because of an irritation of a diaphragm. Particularly, left shoulder will give rise to pain if there is a splenic injury. Occasionally, there will be intra-abdominal bleeding, which can give rise to left shoulder pain, and occasionally, if there is an acute pancreatitis, particularly involving the tail of the pancreas, you can have a Kehr's sign positive. There is one more sign called as a balance sign, that is a dull percussion in a left upper quadrant, which is secondary due to a splenic injury, blood accumulating in a subcapsular region or a extrascapular region, extracapsular region, that is surrounding the spleen, and that gives rise to the increased dullness in a left upper quadrant. It is called as a balance sign. Sometimes they can ask you in your oral. These are all the different signs at your leisure: Cullen's, Kehr's, McBurney's sign, Murphy's sign, Iliopsoas sign, obturator signs, Gray-Turner's, Chandelier signs. Rousing sign is what we call as a rebound tenderness. How you elicit, what are the findings, and in which condition you get it. All are being mentioned at your leisure time. Majority we have already mentioned here. So at your leisure time you can go through, mainly for oral exam, very frequently being asked. So you can go through your at your leisure time. You can have a pause and you can just go through. Now regarding Murphy's sign, I mentioned mid-clavicular line and right costal margin junction. At that area, if you get a tenderness plus person holds the breath, when you are asking a person to take a deep breath, you are doing a deep palpation, and as soon as the gallbladder touches your finger, the person will hold the breath and he will complain of pain. This is characteristic described as a Murphy's sign. That is a pain in right hypochondrium, or we call right upper quadrant. It is because of a cholecystitis or inflammation of a gallbladder, and it follows the Courvoisier law, that in a chronic cholecystitis the gallbladder is shrunken, but in an acute cholecystitis it is inflamed and enlarged, and you will have a Murphy's sign positive. McBurney's point is a junction of medial 2/3 and lateral 1/3 line joining the umbilicus to the anterior superior iliac spine. So if you take the junction of 2/3 on the medial and 1/3 on the lateral, this is called McBurney's point. At that particular point, if you do a superficial palpation, if there is a severely inflamed appendix, you may be able to detect spasm of the abdominal muscle, we call as a guarding. But on a deep palpation, person will have a severe tenderness, that is a deep tenderness will be present, and that we call as a McBurney's point tenderness. But when you palpate the left iliac fossa and release, you get a pain in a right iliac fossa, that is called rousing sign or rebound tenderness. Once in a while, at the McBurney's point, apart from acute appendicitis, you can have a pain because of a pelvic inflammatory disease, abdominal abscess, ovarian torsion or twisted fallopian tubes, very rarely incarcerated or strangulated hernia, Michel's diverticulum, which can be tender and if it is inflamed. So in all these conditions, you can have sometime tenderness in a right iliac fossa at McBurney's point. Do keep it in mind. We have already mentioned when you are doing a deep palpation in a left iliac fossa and suddenly you release it, you get tenderness or pain. Person will complain of pain in right iliac fossa, we call as a rebound tenderness or rousing sign. So it is a positive response. Patient feels the pain in a right lower quadrant. When you release the pressure in a left lower quadrant, this is described as a rousing sign or rebound tenderness. This is another method. Now there are two other methods. So Rousing sign is an indirect method of eliciting sign. We call it a non-classical appendicitis. You will elicit Iliopsoas sign and obturator signs. Now what are these signs? Iliopsoas sign is, this is what we call as hyperextension. So when you do a hyperextension of a right lower limb, so in a left lateral decubitus position, what you are asking a person is, you are asking a person to hyperextend, and when you are doing a hyperextension, there is a stretching of the muscle, and that stretches iliopsoas muscle. And if you have got a retrocecal appendix, the person will complain of a pain. This is iliopsoas sign. While in case of an obturator sign, in a supine posture, you flex at knee, you flex at hip, and what you do is external rotation. What you are doing is, you are stimulating the obturator muscle, and that obturator muscle, if it is a retrocecal appendix, sorry, pelvic appendix, then it will be stimulated by obturator contraction. The person will complain of a pain. So we call as an internal rotation of a right leg will give rise to the pain when you are flexing at hip and flexing at knee joint. This is given a name obturator sign. This can be asked to you in your oral, and occasionally in appendicitis you may be asked as a short notes. We call atypical signs in appendicitis. So do keep it in mind. That will be Rousing sign, Iliopsoas sign, and obturator signs. Very frequently asked in your oral. Now there is another name given to rebound tenderness, Blumberg sign, and that is for peritonitis. You keep a pressure on abdominal wall and release it. You will have a rebound tenderness, which is a characteristic described as a Blumberg sign, and it is in a case of a peritoneal irritation, that is in case of peritonitis. So that is Blumberg sign. But rebound tenderness, by palpating in a left iliac fossa, releasing it, the pain in a right iliac fossa is given a name Rousing sign. So there is a difference between a Blumberg sign and Rousing sign. So see, you can, here there is a deep pressure which is being applied and you are releasing it, and when you release it, person complains of a pain, and that is called rebound tenderness, or we give a name Blumberg sign. Blumberg sign. You can get very classical Rousing sign in case of acute appendicitis, while Blumberg sign is in a case of acute peritonitis. Also you can demonstrate similar sign in case of diverticulitis also, but this is not a common. It is more common for acute peritonitis, and Rousing sign is more common for acute appendicitis. Now this is what we call as a Murphy's sign, and there is something called as a Kurweiser law. So while doing a hooking method on the right side, when you are doing a hooking method, and when the person is taking a deep inspiration and suddenly the person gets a catch or he complains of a pain, we call Murphy's sign positive. This is because of tender gallbladder, very classical in case of an acute cholecystitis. So at a Murphy's point, if you get a pain, it is very frequently because of cholecystitis or enlarged inflamed gallbladder. This is McBurney's point, and here lower border of right costal margin and mid clavicular line junction is Murphy's point. So at that particular spot, if you put your finger or you put your palm and ask the person to take deep inspiration, and when the person is taking a deep inspiration, you push your hand posteriorly and towards the right costal margin, and if a person gets pain, that is Murphy's sign positive. When you are pressing in a left iliac fossa and release it, that is Rousing sign. and when you release the pressure by pressing on an abdominal wall and release it straight, and you get the pain at the same region, that is rebound tenderness, also given a second name Bloomberg sign in case of peritonitis. This is one of the technology which is not commonly being utilized. So this is a palpating hand, this is a pushing hand. This is mainly utilized for kidney, but even for liver you can utilize, but not commonly being utilized. So this is a pushing hand, this is the palpating hand. So you can utilize for liver, and when you are doing on the left side, it is for spleen. So this is also called as a bimanual palpation for liver. Once in a while this can be asked to you in your oral. So there will be one pushing hand, one palpating hand. By and large, when you are palpating the lower border, you can push from the back, and sometimes you can push from a right hypochondrium towards your palpating finger, this, by pushing it towards this side. So this is pushing anteriorly, and this is pushing medially, and this is your palpating hand. And this is in a kidney. This is a palpating hand which you are pushing backward, and this is you are pushing it anteriorly. So this is bimanual palpation for kidney. This is a bimanual palpation for kidney again. But when you are pushing your hand upward and you are pushing this anteriorly, or you are pushing from right hypochondrium towards this palpating hand, that is for liver. Usually not commonly being utilized. And for a spleen, this is pushing hand, this is palpating hand. So at the left hypochondrium, that is the left costal margin, you push your hand towards the left costal margin, and this is a pushing hand and this is a palpating hand. These are usually technology which are being utilized, very not common. This is called bimanual palpation for spleen, mainly for just palpable spleen. But just palpable spleen will be 2 times or sometimes 3 times the original size. So it is very, very difficult to palpate just enlarged spleen. When you use your flex finger and hooking around the right costal margin, it is for just palpable liver, and this is just palpable liver. And I'll show you the other photograph. Sorry, where is that hooking method for spleen? There will be another photograph for spleen. That will be, you will be hooking here. You will be hooking here. This is for hooking method for right border of costal margin, right costal margin for liver. This is ballotment method, means you are pushing the fluid away from the palpating liver. So if there is a free fluid in abdomen and you want to identify whether the liver is enlarged or not, or spleen is enlarged or not, with one hand you try to push the fluid away and the palpating hand will try to palpate the liver. So that will be there for ballotment method. Now normally during palpation for a deeper structure, we'll be palpating for liver, spleen, gallbladder, kidney, urinary bladder, uterus, ovary, pancreas, etc. and signs of ascites. This is palpation for liver. Single hand method, bimanual method, hooking method. 3 technique. By and large, for liver to palpate, you have to use a dip method, and you start palpating from a right iliac fossa, go towards the right hypochondrium, or we say right costal margin, and try to palpate. So you go from a right iliac fossa towards the right hypochondrium and palpate for the lower border of liver. And to further help out, if it is difficult, then you can use bimanual. By and large, it is not commonly being utilized. Upper border, demonstrable by percussion, is in a 5th intercostal space in a mid-clavicular line. by and large the lower border is parallel to the right costal margin. This is in detail. You will have to mark out all the different points. So I'm skipping over this. At your leisure time you can go through. This is the upper border and this is the lower border. By palpation and by percussion, you can reconfirm it by percussion. This is from right iliac fossa towards the right costal margin or right hypochondrium. This is single hand method. This is two hand method. This is bimanual palpation of liver. Bimanual palpation of liver. I've already explained before. And in a person with ascites, you will do Bellotman method. So with one hand you are pushing fluid away and then you are using a two hand method. The top hand will push the fluid away and with the palpating hand you will try to palpate the liver. This is a hooking method for just palpable liver. You can confirm the lower border of liver by scratch test. I have already mentioned in auscultation. This is a scratch test. You scratch it and auscultate. As soon as you come to the lower border of liver, the sound will become louder. So you try to identify the lower border, mark it out, and then you can mention regarding all the findings. Usually we say size, shape, surface, age, consistency, tenderness, pulsation, on auscultation, audible bruit or rub. And if it is very loud enough, it may be even palpable. That is, rub may be palpable and bruit may be also palpable. And pulsation will be palpable. Little detail in that particular part. We already mentioned in liver enlargement. Liver will be massively enlarged in case of severe congestive cardiac failure, acute hepatitis, amoebic liver abscess, pyogenic liver abscess, chronic myeloid leukemia, myelofibrosis, malaria, Kala Azar. There are good number of conditions. But just enlarged liver in case of enteric fever, subacute bacterial endocarditis, anemia, hemolytic anemias, etc. Liver may be just enlarged or it is mild to moderate enlargement. But massive enlargement in amoebic liver abscess, pyogenic liver abscess, congestive heart failure, acute hepatitis, in those conditions it will be quite enlarged. So those are the questions very frequently asked to you in your oral. Liver will be shrunken in case of cirrhosis of liver or acute necrosis of liver. As far as surface is concerned, surface is always smooth, but you will have an irregular surface depending upon the type of cirrhosis, micronodular or macronodular or mixed. You will have an irregular surface. You will have a single nodule and that is we call pit over the nodule, very characteristic in case of a malignancy. If it is smooth and enlarged, very frequently in case of an infective hepatitis, congestive heart failure, or in case of an abscess. Edge is usually sharp and smooth, but liver will be hard and edge will be very firm in case of cirrhosis. Usually liver is very soft, but it will be hard in case of malignancy. Consistency will be soft, but it will be firm in case of cirrhosis and malignancy. It will be tender in case of a congestive heart failure, abscess, infective hepatitis, or secondary metastasis, malignancy. Pulsation will be very characteristic in case of a tricuspid stenosis, which will be a diastolic pulsation, while in case of tricuspid regurgitation, it will be a systolic pulsation. Absolutely rare in case of hemangiomas. We have already mentioned that pulsation will be palpable, very uncommon, but in a loud bruit, which is mainly because of hemangiomas or AV fistulas, that may be palpable. And rub, if it is loud enough, may be even auscultated and palpable. These are some of the things which can be asked in your oral. So in your oral, they'll ask you what you will mention: size, shape, tender, surface, smooth, nodular, smooth or nodular, consistency, soft or hard, border, pulsation, then movement with respiration, and any palpable rub or palpable bruit. All those will be asked. Then in your oral, another things which is very frequently asked is if liver is normal but still palpable. I already explained you that liver, if it is pushed down because of pushing of diaphragm, right diaphragm, that is in case of emphysema, right side tension pneumothorax, a thin emaciated person, in case of viscerotosis, occasionally if the riddle lobe is enlarged, adequately enlarged, that may be palpable. And left lobe may be palpable in case of amoebic liver abscess or secondary metastasis in left lobe. Liver will not be palpable or shrunken in case of cirrhosis or acute necrosis. And acute necrosis is very characteristic of a drug induced, particularly carbon tetrachloride. And occasionally in case of an acute necrosis due to acute fulminant hepatitis. We already mentioned the big liver can be in alcoholic hepatitis, viral hepatitis, hepatocellular carcinoma, secondary metastasis, congestive heart failure, autoimmune hepatitis, secondary metastasis, amyloidosis, sarcoidosis, myelofibrosis, leukemia, lymphomas, malaria, kala azar, etc. So try to remember all those conditions very frequently asked in your oral. Pulsatile liver, I already mentioned two conditions: tricuspid regurgitation, tricuspid stenosis. Tricuspid stenosis, diastolic pulsation; tricuspid regurgitation, systolic pulsation. Liver will be enlarged, tender, soft, and you get a hepatojugular reflux in a person with what we call is a right side congestive heart failure, right side failure. It is a characteristic sign. Short form we call as HJR. Hepatojugular reflux or abdominojugular reflux. These are the two terms commonly being utilized. Ptosis liver or pushed liver in emphysema, right side pneumothorax, right side massive pleural effusion. Very, very rare to get in a subphrenic abscess. Liver will be pushed up in case of a lung pathology like right lower lobe collapse, right side fibrosis, diaphragmatic paralysis, or liver is pushed up in pregnancy, obesity, tense ascites, or if there is a massive pelvic tumor pushing the abdominal structures, particularly liver. As far as spleen is concerned, we have told you that spleen to be palpable, it should get enlarged 2 to 3 times the original size. Then it is just palpable. So when spleen is very easily palpable, it is massively enlarged. And just going through that little things little faster. When you try to palpate, palpate from right iliac fossa towards the left hypochondrium. By and large, you might require a bimanual palpation. So this will be the pushing end, this will be palpating end. And if the spleen is enlarged, 2 or 3 finger below the left costal margin, usually we say a massive enlargement. Massive enlargement very characteristic in case of malaria, kala azar, very characteristic. Polycythemia rubra vela, chronic myeloid leukemia, myelofibrosis, we call as a myeloproliferative disorders, another very, very common. And we have already mentioned that while you do a palpation, single hand method, bimanual method, or hooking method. Hooking method is very frequently utilized only in case you are in doubt and you are not able to identify the just palpable spleen. But a very easily palpable will be by a single hand method you can easily identify, or a bimanual palpation. So this becomes a pushing hand, this is a palpating hand. This is a two-hand method, this is a single hand method. This is, you can see that this is a single hand method. This is a bimanual palpation. This is a hooking method. This is again a bimanual palpation, bimanual palpation. This is again a bimanual palpation. So these are the different technology for spleen palpation. So try to identify the enlarged spleen and then you can mention everything regarding a spleen, that is whether it is normal or enlarged, whether there is a splenic notch, whether there is a ballotable or not, and then you can also mention regarding a trough space, because trough space will be obliterated in case of a massively enlarged spleen. So regarding a spleen, size and size wise mild, moderate and severe. Massive spleen I have already mentioned: malaria, Kala Azar, severe portal hypertension, chronic myeloid leukemia, polycythemia rubra vera, myelofibrosis, aplastic anemia, etc. In a mild enlargement, right from malaria, congestive cardiac failure, infective endocarditis, enteric fever, hemolytic anemia. Shape wise, usually it is oval in shape and you can get a notch, we call splenic notch, on the medial surface. Surface is always smooth. Occasionally it will be irregular surface in case of secondary metastasis. Consistency wise, usually it is soft, it will be hard in case of a secondary metastasis. It will be tender in case of a splenic abscess, secondary metastasis and infective endocarditis. The border is always smooth and round. By and large, it is not pulsative. It is not pulsatile. So pulsations are not palpable. It will move with respiration, and during a deep inspiration, the spleen will move towards the umbilicus. In case of perisplenaritis, particularly quite common in a splenic abscess, and in case of an infective endocarditis, splenic rub may be audible and very rarely it may be palpable. We have already mentioned regarding a hepatomegaly, splenomegaly, but in your oral they can ask you regarding a hepatosplenomegaly. Hepatosplenomegaly will be very characteristic in case of malaria, Kala Azar, in congestive heart failure, infective endocarditis, chronic myeloid leukemia, enteric fever, hemolytic jaundice or hemolytic anemias, and polycythemia rubra vera. Do remember, these are some of the oral questions which are very frequently asked to you in your oral. So try to remember those. I already mentioned the massive splenomegaly, Kala Azar, malaria, chronic myeloid leukemia, myelofibrosis, polycythemia rubra vera, thalassemia major, that is we call hemolytic anemias, occasionally in case of amyloidosis and storage disorders. So try to remember some of the common causes like malaria, Kala Azar, chronic myeloid leukemia, polycythemia rubra vera, myelofibrosis, aplastic anemias, etc. And occasionally in case of a hemolytic jaundice, particularly beta thalassemia major, in that it will be massively enlarged. Just for a gallbladder, site, size, border, consistency, surface, tenderness, pulsation, movement with respiration, and Murphy's sign positive. Kurweiser law will say that size will change after the meal, and also the gallbladder will not be palpable in a chronic cholecystitis. So Kurweiser law says that a palpable non-tender gallbladder in a patient with a jaundice suggests extrahepatic obstruction of biliary tree. That is Kurweiser's sign. Murphy's sign, I have already mentioned that tender enlarged is cholecystitis. Boas sign is hyperesthesia at the right scapula, inferior border. That is Boas sign. And Kurweiser law says that in presence of jaundice, a palpable gallbladder is unlikely to be due to gallstone, but more likely to be due to malignancy, that is carcinoma of head of pancreas. So that is a Kurweiser sign and Kurweiser law. Now we go to kidney palpation. It is a bimanual palpation. Kidney cannot be palpable in a normal person. When kidney becomes enlarged 2 times or 3 times the original size, then only it is palpable. In an absolutely thin built individual, right lower lobe of kidney may be palpable, but again it is very, very rare in an absolutely thin emaciated person. The palpation for kidney is always a bimanual palpation. This will be the pushing end, this will be the palpating end. And while palpation, you have to ask the person to take a deep inspiration and you push this hand posteriorly and this hand anteriorly. So you are pushing the lower pole of the kidney. What you are going to palpate is the lower pole of the kidney. Upper pole of the kidney can never be palpable. And again, you will have to mention all the findings of palpation in a kidney, that is site, size, consistency, shape, surface, etc. The kidney will be massively enlarged in hydronephrosis, polycystic kidney and Wilms tumor. Occasionally in case of a horseshoe kidney. If kidney is having a ptosis, instead of in a loin, it is in a right iliac fossa or a left iliac fossa, it may be palpable. In a polycystic kidney, it will be cystic and soft. While in case of a Wilms tumor, it will be hard. What we palpate is mainly the lower pole of the kidney. In a case of a polycystic kidney, you will get a multiple cyst and irregular surface. And also in case of a Wilms tumor, you will have an irregular nodular surface and it will be hard and tender. Border is usually round. It will be tender in case of a Wilms or secondary metastasis. Even in hydronephrosis, pyelonephritis, polycystic kidney also may be tender. Kidney is always non-pulsatile. It moves with respiration vertically down. In case of a free fluid present in a swelling, you might have a fluctuation positive, particularly in case of a severe hydronephrosis. And we have told you, in a case of a viscerotosis kidney may be palpable without any enlargement. These are some of the things can be asked to you in your oral. They can ask you the difference between gallbladder and kidney. That is, gallbladder is on the right side, so you have to differentiate between right kidney and gallbladder. So at your leisure time, you can go through. I've kept this particularly for your oral exams. So this is the difference between a gallbladder, complaints, site, shape, surface, tenderness, consistency, border, etc. Then pulsation, fluctuation, movement with respiration, location, and percussion finding. And this is left kidney, and you have to compare with the spleen, site, shape, surface, tenderness, consistency, border, etc. All this at your leisure time you can go through. So I'm keeping, you can have a pause in your video and you can have the differences. Okay, I'm keeping for few seconds because this is a very long chapter. Then as far as mass is concerned, when you cannot identify that it is a liver, spleen, gallbladder, appendicular mass, urinary bladder, uterus, etc., then you can mention site, size, shape, surface, tenderness, border, consistency, pulsation, impulse on cuffing, movement with respiration, transillumination, any lymph node in the draining area, etc. So you try to mention. By and large, you will be able to identify liver, spleen, uterus, bladder, sometimes gallbladder can be easily identifiable. So try to identify. I'm skipping over some of this. Pancreas, by and large, it is not palpable because it is a retroperitoneal structure. But in case of a massively enlarged pancreas, particularly in a CA pancreas or in a pseudocyst, you will get pseudocyst which will be palpable. Pelvic organ wise, urinary bladder, uterus and ovarian tumor, when they are massively enlarged, they become palpable. And dullness on percussion will be there because all those uterus and ovarian tumor are solid structure while bladder is filled with urine, and that becomes dull on percussion. Urinary bladder will be enlarged, that can be asked to you in your oral because of BPH, bladder stone, stricture, neurogenic bladder. during pregnancy or because of external pressure by pelvic tumors. By and large, in oral it can be asked. Uterus during pregnancy, hematocolpus, pyometra, hydatidform mole, fibroid, uterine malignancy, choriocarcinoma, etc. Ovary, mainly ovarian malignancy, ovarian tumors like teratomas or big ovarian cyst. Not very common, but these two can be common and they can be massively enlarged. Appendicular lump may be palpable in a right iliac fossa and you can have a Rorschach sign positive. In a retrocecal appendix, you will have a iliopsoas sign positive. Sorry, in a pelvic, iliopsoas sign will be positive and in a retrocecal, obturator signs will be positive. And we have already shown you this difference between intra-abdominal and extra-abdominal mass. Knee chest position is mainly utilized for Poodle sign or to differentiate aortic aneurysm pulsation or pulsatile tumors or a small lump which is sitting on the top of abdominal aorta. So that will be separated, the pulsation will disappear. But abdominal aortic aneurysm pulsation will persist and it will be an expansile pulsation, not a transmitted pulsation. While in case of a tumor or a mass sitting on the abdominal aorta, it will be transmitted pulsation. And Poodle signs we have already explained in a case of percussion. So this is the knee chest position and you can palpate for pulsation, transmitted pulsation or expansile pulsation. You can look for paraumbilical node and when their paraumbilical nodes are palpable, we call as a Sister Joseph sign or Sister Joseph lymph nodes. Shifting dullness, horseshoe shaped dullness, mainly this is in a percussion, we have discussed in percussion. This will be the area of tympanic sound, this will be the area of dullness, so we call it a horseshoe shaped dullness. And you can demonstrate shifting dullness. And while demonstrating a shifting dullness, you can demonstrate also fluid thrill. For a fluid thrill, you will require one person to put the hand in the center and you can demonstrate transmitted thrill or we call transmitted fluid thrill. So this will be the three classical signs in a case of a tense ascites or adequate quantity of a free fluid in abdomen. So transmitted fluid thrill will be very easily demonstrable. You will require one hand in the center. This will be the percussing hand and this will be palpating hand. And same thing when you get auscultation, we call fluid thrill audible. So this is one hand in the center, this is percussing, this is palpating. Splash will be audible and can be palpable when you put it on a distended stomach in case of a pyloric stenosis where it is filled with liquid and there is a air in the fundus part and you shake the person or you rock the person and you can feel for splash on palpation and it can be audible also. We can call that as audible succussion splash and audible. And when it is palpable by a palpating hand, we call it a palpable succussion splash and it is very characteristic in case of a pyloric stenosis. So in ascites, Ballotman method is utilized. In obese, deep palpation. Viscerotosis, organ may be palpable in an abnormal area. In situs inversus, spleen will be on the right side, liver will be on the left side. In pneumothorax, liver and spleen can be pushed down and can be palpable. Even sometimes kidney may be pushed down. If hepatic rub, splenic rub and renal bluey are round, loud enough, may be palpable and audible. Doughy feel is characteristic in case of a tubercular abdomen. Edema of abdominal wall will be there in a generalized anasarca, very characteristic in case of hypoproteinemia. This is a question of oral. Liver pulsation, tricuspid stenosis, diastolic, tricuspid regurgitation, systolic, and they will be along the right costal margin. Aortic pulsation, transmitted pulsation will be there in a case of a tumor sitting on the aorta, and expansile pulsation will be in aortic aneurysm. And in a normal person, thin emaciated, without aneurysm, it will be a midline pulsation in a thin emaciated person. RVH pulsation will be palpable in a right costal margin just below the xiphisternum. They will be very characteristic in case of a cor pulmonale. Palpable sounds like hepatic rub, splenic rub, they are abnormal. But when they are loud enough, fluid thrill may be palpable. Splashing sound in case of a pyloric stenosis may be palpable. And renal artery bruit may be also palpable. Rare questions of oral. So these are all different. This is palpable, hepatic rub and bruit. This is for fluid thrill. In a varicose vein, you try to look for the direction of the blood flow, and in caput medusa it will be away from the umbilicus. In scar we have already mentioned, look for the site, length, keloid, discharge, gapping of wound, scar hernia, tenderness, etc. Peristalsis you can confirm, and hernia you can look for. And in an abdominal examination, inguinal hernia and femoral hernia examination is included, and examination of external genitals should be done thoroughly. And at the renal angle, look for tenderness, edema, swelling, redness, warmness, and also palpate for a bruit in a case of a renal artery stenosis. Over the spine, look for deformities like kyphosis, scoliosis, gibbus. And you can have a swelling due to abscess like Pott spine, or secondary metastasis, or even malignancy, carcinoma. Sorry, typing mistake. Divarication of recti you can confirm when you ask the person to flex the head, and it will be seen very frequently in case of obesity, multipara. A person recovers after a huge tense ascites in an old individual because of a lax abdomen. Abdominal examination is not complete without PR proctoscopy, so that should be done. And in a female, PV and pars speculum examination must be done. So pelvic examination and rectal examination is a part of abdominal palpation. So this is perianal region examination, this is per-rectal examination, PR proctoscopy, and look for abdominal aneurysm, expansile pulsation and transmitted pulsation. So look for those particular things. This is expansile pulsation you are looking for, and transmitted pulsation will be vertically transmitted, and look for tenderness, swelling, redness, etc. at a costovertebral angle, tenderness, and over the vertebra. So those are the things at renal angle. So costovertebral tenderness you should look for, costolumbar tenderness you should look for, and at renal angles. So look for all those signs. So just going through, these are all for oral. So this is an extensive, very long. I appreciate your patience for listening to me. So I thank you all for taking out time. I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate that for spending some of the time with me. I hope this will be very helpful to you, because this is the most common topic which is asked in your oral, and almost all candidate